Hey Warriors, this is Amy.
And I'm Sarah.
We are the hosts of The Unqualified Therapist.
We are not here to give you advice.
We are here to tell you our stories, share your stories, and bring on the professionals from time to time.
Mental health is complicated, and we know that from our personal experience.
We believe in professional therapy. Both Sarah and I use that on our own healing journeys.
But we also know it isn't one size fits all.
The stigma surrounding mental illness can make us feel alone.
We are not alone.
You are not alone.
And you're listening to the Unqualified Therapists, Inc.
Warrior. You don't know my struggle, you don't know my pain, you don't know my past, so you don't know who's to blame. You don't know my weakness, you don't know my fight. Ain't been in my darkness, so you never see my light. I bleed red like you won't get no proof. 'Cause even if I'm losing, I will never be defeated. And even if I'm crying, I will never let you see it. So I'm laying out.
So we have a very special guest with us this evening, and we are super stoked for you guys to get to meet Miss Katie Maloney. She is a life coach and author and has written an amazing book called Cake Pops and Coffee, which is the cutest name ever.
Yes, it is. I love it so much.
Love it, love it.
So cute, so catchy.
Yes. And we were really excited to talk with you because your description of the book says that you were looking for some lighter material to discuss trauma because everything was just so heavy of a topic. And so when you didn't find it, you wrote it yourself, which I think is the freaking most amazing thing ever. Just do it yourself. If you can't find it, then I'll just do it myself.
That's what we do.
That's what we do.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you and welcome,
Thank
Katie.
you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
We are so happy to have you, and I'm sure it's difficult because you have to do it over and over again. But for our listeners, if you could just kind of start at the beginning, maybe tell us a little bit about your story, who you are, and how you came to be someone who is a speaker and an author.
Yeah. So let's dive in.
Let's do it.
Let's just go right for it.
Let's get it.
I was sexually abused by both my parents until I was about 18. And then at that time, I moved to another city. I got a scholarship to college, and it was the first time that I was ever away from the abuse. And so during that time was when everything kind of started coming up, and I was able to process things. I started recognizing triggers, and I knew that I needed to start kind of digging through and working through a lot of things.
Yeah.
And so that's when I started looking to books for guidance, and all I could find were those super heavily titled self-help books or psychology books, and all of them I felt completely overwhelmed before I even opened them. And so that was when I was like, God, I just wish that I could talk with someone who felt like I was having a conversation with my best friend. We were drinking some coffee, eating some cake pops, and just sharing stories. Right. And that was when, as you said, that was when I started writing my book.
Wow. Well, I feel as though I read something, I think, on your blog talking about how there is this weird juxtaposition or dichotomy of like all this bad shit, but there was like good stuff too in your life. And how challenging that is for people who haven't lived that world to understand. And I just related to that so well. And I appreciated you saying that because I am doing my own writing of a book right now on something very not similar, but like it's similar in trauma, right? But there's so much good. And so even you were able to, they're just trying to understand like that you can have both, that both were able to coexist.
Yes.
Without guilt.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like you feel guilty for feeling happy.
I mean, let me just try to clarify. So you're saying in your childhood, there were these like bright moments.
Yes. So I remember the reason I wrote that blog was because people started asking me about my childhood, and about like positive memories, or even friends would be like, do you remember this? And I was like, I don't remember anything. Like, I have very few memories of my childhood. And I realized it was because when I separated from my family, I call them like my previous family, I don't consider them family, but when I distance myself from them, I needed to shut down all emotions so that I could move
Yeah.
forward. And I needed to categorize bad and good because those lines had been so blurred for so many years. And so it was like almost like I was starting at preschool and I was like, this is bad, this is good. And it wasn't until about 10 years later where I had processed so much more that I was able to say, well, actually, I had some good moments. Like I did fun things with my sister. I had a couple friends that I had did fun things with in childhood. And so it was really healing for me to be able to go back and say, I did have positive moments in my childhood, and that doesn't invalidate any of the negative
Right.
experiences that I have.
Right.
But it also allowed me to just honestly experience life so much more fully because I'm not closing myself off to labeling good or bad. I'm able to kind of recognize that everything can kind of be both sometimes. And so that was just a really important step in my healing journey.
So powerful.
It is very powerful. And I just have to ask, was it something that you didn't know was wrong
I was gonna
until
ask
you
that too.
realized that it wasn't happening to your other friends? Or
Oh,
kind of what was that moment?
great question. So there was, I feel like I know for a fact that I always knew because you just, even as a kid, and that was, and I, even as a kid, when I was being told, like, this is normal, this is what parents do, this is what loving families do, it's like there's something in you as a kid in your gut that's like, but it doesn't feel okay. This doesn't feel
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
know that I always knew, and it's interesting because what I recognized first, it wasn't that like, oh, these kids aren't being abused, but it was like, oh, this dad like talks to his daughter. I was like, that's so weird. I just saw them having like a normal conversation. I was like, that's weird. Didn't know parents do that. And
Yeah.
like, and it's crazy, but that was the first of it. And then I just remember it took me so long to even, I started in my head being like, I think maybe, I don't want to say anything, but I think maybe I might be like, mom and dad might be doing bad things to me. But like, that
Mm.
was all I would leave it. And for years I said that. And then I had the courage, like a couple years later, to write it down and be like, I think maybe this is happening. And then after years of that, I was able to say in my head, I think I'm being abused. And then I could write it. And
Mhm.
then I was 18 by the time that I was like, I have been abused and I know it.
Right.
But it was a process. It took a really long time.
So it was your entire childhood?
It was, yes, yes, yes.
I'm gonna pause really quickly here because we can take things out. If this is like, I don't know what topics you're okay with talking about or how you're not. If this is too much or if it's
Mhm.
like I'm going, I know my curiosity mostly because of the things I've read and then probably how our listeners are going to feel, but I don't want to ask or talk about anything that you don't want to talk about.
Right.
Oh no, I'm so open. I spent an entire chapter in my book talking about masturbation and learning to
Okay.
masturbate after sex. So like,
I
I'm
did. I
so
did
open.
see that and I was like, I cannot wait to talk about masturbating. Or wait, what did Lauren call it? She called it
Something
self-pleasure.
self-pleasure.
She was
She
like,
said, I don't like the
masturbating is
name.
like such a boy's word. But
Yeah.
anyways, either way, yes, I do want to get to that. But I was, it's interesting to think about like that has been going on that whole time and then how, at what age did it start?
Mm. So I don't remember exactly when it started, but I mean, I've read so many things about before you're even really, I'm not, I don't know all the
Right, with
psychology
memory.
language.
Mhm.
Right. But like, I mean, when you're a baby, when you're the
Yeah.
most formative years, that's when you can be most affected. So I believe it started really very, very early on.
And you had a sister?
Yes. Yeah.
And was she also abused?
Yes, she was. I have a twin sister actually, but again,
Oh.
but it is a different. That is probably the one thing that I don't share too much about, just because
Right.
we both have separate like
Sure.
ways of processing it.
Handling it. Yeah,
Mhm.
sure. Sure.
Yeah, so I am just so curious because I had one instance of a sexual assault, not multiple, not during, going on for like my entire childhood.
Right.
And I have struggles with with like completely enjoying sex and allowing myself to feel pleasure and not enjoying, but getting out of my head. Like I'm just so in my head about it. And I just am curious, like, have you found that freedom and how?
Oh, such a great question. I wish that
She
I
loves
could.
this question. I can see it on her
I
face. I love
love
it. I
it.
cannot wait to hear the answer.
I just think that there's so much to talk about as far as intimacy, pleasure, self pleasure, like all of those things in regards to post trauma. And so I do really love this topic because it was also one of the things that I struggled with the most, and I put so much work into healing. So I wish that I could say yes, absolutely, I have no problem having sex all the time, like anytime I want. But that's not. That's
Yeah.
it's not. I still get in my head, and I still find myself doing one of two things. Well, there were two things that I would love to talk about that I really experienced, and that was the first was because I talk about this in my book pretty extensively. And I know that it's kind of a heavy topic, but it's really important for me to talk about because I've had people who have
Absolutely.
read it and they've messaged me and been like, I thought I was the only one. And this is amazing
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
somebody else has. So, one of the things that I talk about is having to imagine something, for lack of a better word, like fucked up or non
Yeah.
consensual
Yeah.
in order to orgasm. Because
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
kid, I was trained to,
Mm.
not trained, but I mean, I was forced to orgasm. And in that moment, I dissociated and I just
Right.
imagined other terrible things because in that way
Right.
it was easier in a sense than imagining a parent, like knowing a parent was doing it.
Mm.
And so
Yeah.
after years of that as an adult, when I'm away from the abuse with a partner who loves me, who I love, I
Right.
found myself only being able to orgasm with him if I imagined these these scenarios.
Right. Right.
And I hated it and it felt terrible and I
Yeah.
didn't want to do it. And I tried so many different things. I like talked to my partner about it, and got like him involved, and he'd be like, stay with me, let's be present. And that was beautiful, but that didn't work.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until,
Yeah.
and this was years, but it really wasn't until I started working on self pleasure, and that was when
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I like really dedicated some time to like pelvic bowl meditations and just healing the space, like my womb space and the energy there. That
Ooh, I
was,
don't know what that is.
ooh, I would love to talk.
You're gonna have to tell us about
Okay.
that.
So there's a lot of pelvic bowl healing methods. So what I'm talking about, there are actual like physical healing methods, but what I'm talking about is just energy and using meditations. And so
Yeah.
Yep.
when I refer to the pelvic bowl, it's actually like I'm talking about the energy, but it is anatomically correct. So it's basically at the top of your hip bones, down around your backside, and then up. And so just encompassing all of the man, I'm like gesturing, but nobody can see anything. But encompassing like all of your reproductive
We can see.
organs. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
um, and that is the space that kind of in theory, holds your core energy, it holds your femininity.
Hmm.
And when you experience abuse, a lot of us, without even realizing, because we've never even heard about the pelvic bowl, but we shut off the energy completely. And so when we are older, we'll find ourselves really struggling to receive or to experience pleasure or to allow ourselves to be creative. And it's because we've really disconnected from that energy. And one of the things that you can do is kind of, I offer guided meditation, and I talk about this in my book as well, is just imagine going into your bowl and you start just by soothing all of the space
Hmm.
around your bowl.
Mm.
And the first time I ever entered my pelvic bowl, I was like, oh my God, there's like wounds, there's kind of like caves, openings, and it's like
Yeah.
boarded up.
Yeah.
Um, and that's just what you imagine, but your pelvic bowl will look like whatever you imagine it to
Mhm.
be.
Right.
But then you just spend time healing it and you continue to visit it and you just reconnect with
Hmm.
that energy. And it's so empowering because you realize that your your womb space, your femininity, it's actually very safe and it's guarded and you're finally like
Yeah.
living in it again.
Yeah.
Wow. That's just like,
in all of the things I've ever read or known, I've never heard of that.
I
And that is
haven't either.
amazing.
That is so amazing. And you know what it ties to is the chakras.
The sacral chakra.
So
it made me think of that.
yeah, the root chakra even is in that.
Yeah.
So, and that's your safety and security chakra. And then your passion and creativity is your sacral. So holy cow.
And the
wow, what healing.
The cool thing about that is that, so that's like the first part. And then the second step, so it's almost like following those chakras, because you're starting in your sacral chakra, then you go and you meet your, and I talk about this in my book, but you meet your yoni guardian. And that is what protects the energy from like whatever energy you want in and out. It's there. You're in control of that. And then finally you can connect that energy to the earth. So it's like your root chakra, you're grounded, you have protection. So all three of those steps can be really healing and just kind of shift your perspective of your pleasure. Because one of the things that I struggled with was I always imagined my my vulva, my vagina, is something that I needed to fiercely protect. I was like, protect her, protect her. But actually, she's good. Just let her have some fun. Let her experience pleasure.
Yeah.
So these things help with that.
Wow. I'm definitely going to have to read through that and do that section of your book for real. Yeah, because it's such a wow. So when you were with your partner, is that when you started to think like, okay, I got to figure something else out because this is just not working for me? Yes.
It was funny because with my first partner, that was when I started writing the whole book. And the whole book is not about my first partner ever at all. But but it is what inspired it, because I remember I had spent some time already on my own healing journey, but it is a completely different thing when you invite someone else onto that journey. And there's so many other things that open up. And I was like, oh my, okay, all right, let's figure this out. So that's when I started to write about stuff. Because again, those books, all the books that were available, no one was saying, hey, so you just started dating somebody and you're uncomfortable just holding his hand. Let's walk through it. How do we do this?
Right.
Nobody was saying that. And I was like, okay, I need to talk about stuff like this.
Yes, it's that kind of intimacy even that can be tough after trauma.
Right. I'm going to go back just for a minute. I'm going to assume then that you didn't have boyfriends or anything in high school?
You know what? I did not. I went on a couple, like a date or two while I was in high school. And I had guy friends, and then in college I went on a bunch of dates, but I was way too scared to be in a relationship. So it wasn't until I was 21 that I was like, I'm trying this. We're going to do it. And
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I can't even imagine having a relationship, trying to have a relationship
and it
outside
seems like
that.
Probably your parents would have not approved of that either, because that messes with their whole thing.
Yeah.
Well, I know my sister dated a lot. It was more so like they didn't care. It was, and actually, my I call them Tim and Lisa, but Lisa kicked out Tim when I was 16. So the abuse stopped with my dad when I was about 16, but then it was continued with Lisa.
Like, and I'm sorry, we're like pausing and stuff. It's just like, Jesus Christ. Like, sorry.
I also think like, cause being a mom, we're moms, it's really hard to wrap my mind around. And it's really,
without getting incredibly angry.
Yeah. Yeah. So sorry, that was just,
I love the fierce mama energy. I
love it.
In my brain, I'm thinking of what I would do to someone.
Yeah.
If they did
ever did that to my children.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they are your biological parents.
Yes. Yes.
Hold on one second. Sorry. I'm going to pause the recording.
Okay.
So
So-
I just want to know, when you have something that heavy, what gave you the like courage to look for some lighter like discussion around it?
I honestly, it was more survival.
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
because humor has always been,
yes,
since I
that's
was a kid,
us.
just the
Yep.
way I got through things. And
Yes.
so when it came time to write a book, I was like, let's just give ourselves a fucking break for a little while.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Please. And I just think that it's essential. And it goes back to that everything is kind of a mix of good and bad.
Yeah.
Same thing with conversations around trauma. And right now we have so many more like conversations happening and platforms that encourage conversations. I'm so
Yeah.
happy about that. But at the same time, the conversations need to evolve. Like we need to evolve because all of
Yes.
them are heavy. All of them are focused on
Yes.
sharing your story base only, and we need more conversations. And so that's really what
We
motivated
try to
me.
make sure that we tell people, because we don't want them to think that we're making light of our lives, because we've had our own tragedies and traumas that people just like we pause when we hear your story, they pause when they hear our story, and immediately we like make a joke. But it's just because we
It's our
don't
coping
it's our
mechanism,
coping
one.
mechanism, one, and two, I'm not going to stop talking about it, and I don't want people to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And
That's a way to kind of.
it's a way to kind of just be like, you know what, this is just part of the story, and we need to discuss.
Right.
Yeah. And it just, laughter feels so good and it's so
Yeah.
healing.
Yeah.
So like, please, let's bring that form of healing
Yeah.
into these conversations.
Did you find yourself being able to have joy and laughter growing up?
You know what? I actually think about that all the time, and it is mind blowing to me that I was such a happy kid. Like at home,
Oh.
miserable, completely miserable. But
Yeah.
when I was at school and just out in the world, I was such a good kid, and I was just so vibrant. And I know that made my parents angry. And I look back on it and I'm like, go little Katie, because
Oh, yeah.
I like
Yes.
refuse to lose my little shine, and it makes me so happy. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
That is so beautiful. That makes me so happy,
Yeah.
knowing that you were able to find that for yourself. Holy man.
So probably because of that, none of your teachers were able to pick up on that or recognize anything.
Yeah. I mean, I have teachers now that are reaching out and they're like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, the only indication was that I signed up for everything so I could stay at school until
Yes.
9 p.m. But
Yeah.
Right.
beyond that, they wouldn't have known. And to be honest, I couldn't verbalize it at that time. So even if somebody had said, I think your parents are abusing you, I think maybe I would have been like, yes, finally, thank you. Or I would have been like,
Right.
that's way too scary to even think, but like, leave me alone. So I don't know.
Right.
Like, let's not say that word.
Yeah. Right.
Because that takes it to a whole new level,
Mhm.
and you're just not willing to admit that.
Right.
And the other
I
thing
mean-
is that when it's your parents, it's a horrible situation. You feel terrible, but at the same time, these are the only people that are supposed to take
Right.
care of you right now.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, your parents are all you have. And so, as like a little 12-year-old, am I going to be like, this is happening. My parents, I think, are doing something
Yeah.
bad, but like, I don't know what's going to happen to me if I say anything. So, it's
Right.
just, it's way too scary.
Did you have other relatives that you spent time with?
I had a few, but again,
The memories are pretty foggy.
well, not even that, but a lot of times trauma like that is so generational, and they all experienced it. Do you know what I mean? And so it was like very downplayed, and it was ignored. And even now, I get threats.
Mhm.
I get threatening emails frequently from previous family members because they're either in denial about it or they are very angry that it's come out.
Wow.
How do two people like that find each other?
I was going to ask that too, but I wasn't sure.
Such a great question, and I actually thought about that, and I've actually had some conversations with some therapists about it, and they said, so we believe, and again, I don't know this, but we believe that Lisa was like borderline personality disorder, and
Okay.
and Tim was definitely a sociopath and or a narcissist sociopath, and she said that very frequently those two connect, um,
Mm,
and so it makes a lot of sense actually.
yeah. I can see narcissistic sociopath definitely taking that route, and borderline would just follow suit.
Yes.
Yeah, borderline's
But
a
then when
very
he
scary thing.
left,
She still did
she
it
still did it.
because yeah, both of those things can't be fixed with medicine.
Mm-mm.
That was always my biggest fear, was that my husband was going to be diagnosed with one of those, because I was
Mhm.
like, there's no coming back from that. That's
Right.
just what you are. So those are some of the scariest, I think, diagnoses
Mhm.
out there. Diagnoses.
Mhm.
Okay. Diagnoses.
And so confusing too, just because I mean, again, I try to like unpack memories that I have, and I just specifically with Lisa, I've been more intrigued by, because I kind of wrote my dad off a long time ago. It's just like, oh, he's a pretty evil person. Like, okay, we've moved on. But I think there is a natural, more of an attachment to a mother for kids,
Sure.
and so it was
Mhm.
more difficult. But it was so interesting because all the memories that I have were either like her almost like a little girl, or like this
Mm.
very angry, pretty kind of evil person. So it was just a really weird um, back and forth between those two.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Do you remember any mothering type moments?
I do totally, yeah. There were moments, um, yeah, and that made the whole thing way more confusing.
That's even more. It's like
Mhm.
whenever I want to explain trauma or things like this to people, I want to just, all the words I keep saying are complicated. It's complicated. Like I can't, it's not bad or good. Like it's just complicated.
And I always like to say all of it is valid and okay, like all of the
Yes.
emotions. Because I think I know I myself, when I think back and I'm like, I had moments where I fell down and Lisa like picked me up and held me and put a band-aid on my knee. And I'm just like, you can't think that, because then none of the bad stuff is real and you're a liar and like all the stuff. And it's like,
Mhm.
hey, nope,
Yeah.
all of it's
Yep.
okay. All of it
They
is
can
okay.
coexist for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I know, I'm like,
I'm sorry. I
"Whew,
can't,
we need
like again, we'll
process
cut this out, but we're
processing."
just processing. I mean, really, what do, people who don't live through this, what do you know except for what you read in books? And I just remember being obsessed with those one memoirs when I was in high school and college. I can't even remember the name of them. It was about the little boy. It has a little boy on the front, Lost Boy, or I don't even know what it was. Does anyone know what I'm talking about?
Mm-mm.
Okay, cut
Look
this
it up.
out then.
Look it up
I'll
while
look it up.
we talk. But, oh, man. Yeah, so what did you use to cope besides signing up for everything and staying late at school? But, like, what other things did you do to cope through
I
while you were growing up?
yeah. I remember being a little girl and just having been abused and having to like being forced to abuse my sister, and I remember just being like, so I just what felt, I can't even describe the feeling. It was a horrible feeling, and I felt like a monster. I was like 6 or 7, and I remember just laying in bed and like I knew that it wasn't over. I knew it was going to happen, and I mean I didn't know that it was going to happen for like another 11 years, but
Yeah.
and this sounds maybe kind of cheesy, but I talk about it in my book. But I remember seeing the moon in the window, and I just held my own hand, and I looked
Mm,
at the moon, and I was like, so there was just something in me that knew that this wasn't it, and I truly believe that I've always been gifted with the ability to be like, okay, this is where I am right now, but I'm not my circumstances. So, like,
yeah.
Wow.
this exists right now, but we're going to be out of here at some point. So, it's going to
Yeah.
be okay. So, I'm so
Holy
grateful. I
shit.
don't know where that came from, but
That's well, because you needed it.
yeah.
That was, like, something that was given to you because you were gonna need it. Geez, that took me till I'm 39 years old, and I'm just
Right.
trying to
Being able to
say I am not my
realize.
circumstances. Like,
And I mean, I think you really have to have that ability. And I'm like, again, I'm 42 and I've just learned it, because otherwise, I mean, both Sarah and I have had like suicidal ideations and really like wanting to do that because you can't see past
mm-mm.
the situation. And so
That moment. It's
that
like that
that
moment is where
moment
you
right
live.
there is like
Mhm.
so big and you're like, there's no way, there's no fucking way this is ever going to go away or be done.
Right.
So it's so amazing to me that you were able to see that or feel that. Um, and thank God.
Yeah. Did you ever get into like any drugs or alcohol because to try to numb or anything, or just
I
like typical teenage
Yeah, I
shenanigans?
honestly did not. I went in the opposite direction, and I was like, I was terrified of anything. I mean, I hung out with kids that weren't great, whatever, but I did not like it, and I really avoided anything that made me feel even a fraction of what I felt at home, if that makes sense. I
That
was
makes
like,
sense. Yep.
absolutely not. I'm
Yep.
surrounding myself with so much light. We will not let any darkness in. And
Mm,
again, that was like well into my 20s, and I was finally like, hey, like all of my like all my pillows had to be white and like airy, and I was like, we can stop this, let's bring some like darkness in a little bit, it's okay, there just needs to be a balance. But that, yeah, I definitely went in the opposite direction as a kid.
That's amazing. You are such
your
like
story has me completely, my mind is blown. That God, you're just such a, like, I know we're like on like a video call, but I can
mhm.
feel your
Mhm.
energy
I can too.
and you are so light and you are
Yeah.
just so such a beautiful human being. And it's
Thank
such a gift
you.
to the world that you've like been able to see that.
Yeah.
I'm getting all teary.
I know.
um to see that there was going to be something bigger for you in life. And God, could you imagine if there's like some kids out there who hear your story who are like living it right now or have
Mhm.
lived it and are coming out of it? Because that's the sort of thing that people just, again, don't
Yeah.
talk about.
Don't talk about. That's
And
why.
those are the things
Yeah.
that have to be talked about.
Wow.
Whew. I found the title.
Okay.
It
Okay.
was called A Child Called It, but it's
Oh my
probably,
God. Yes.
I was going to say it's probably aging me.
No, I read it. I read it.
Yeah, but I've read like that and all, there was a couple sequels, but it was some of the, I don't know why, but I was obsessed with it because it was some of the most descriptive abuse that I
Mhm.
have ever heard of in my life. And I just and I read it again. Like I
Mhm.
couldn't fathom in my mind people doing this to other people. And, Sarah and I was, and again, we can cut this out if you want to,
That's fine.
but as you were talking, Katie, I was thinking like, dear God, I was like, it's a wonder you're not one of those. We were huge true crime fans.
Yeah.
So, I could have been like 100% in your court if you had like woken up in the middle of the
Yeah.
night and
And
just
just
like both
yeah.
of them,
Right.
because I mean, Jesus, like, come on. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just incredible to me the grace you had. I don't know. Are
That
they,
you can even speak their names too.
I'm guessing that's not their real names.
It is not the real names, but I do
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
real life like call them by the names. But just for these purposes, I do.
Mhm.
Sure, sure, sure.
Tim's
Wait,
actually
so
he's a police officer.
no,
Get the fuck out of
no,
here.
nope,
Get the
nope. I was thinking they were in jail or dead.
Yeah,
Okay.
no. So
No.
yeah, so as a kid, we were told that there were like recording devices in the house. You could, or like videos, like you could not, and I believe that that's absolutely possible. The phone, they were like the phones were tapped, and I don't know if it was real or not, but I know that that's what we were told. So we like, you can't talk about it, or else you'll be abused. And I mean, and I do remember like writing little notes and like in code because I thought that I was gonna get
Yeah.
murdered. So,
Oh my
Yeah.
God. So you feared for your life.
oh yeah,
Did,
yes,
did they
for the
threaten your
most part.
life?
Um, so there's one. I remember having a dream. There's like two parts of that answer. One, I believe that they absolutely did during the abuse.
Yeah.
But I have limited memories of, like, full memories of the abuse. But the second part of that answer is I remember having a dream where Tim, like, there was an axe in our garage in real life, and Tim, like, I had a dream that he brought it in and he killed all of us. And I remember the next morning being like, Mom, I had this scary dream about Dad, like, killing us with the axe. And I came home from school that same day, and the axe was sitting in front of the door in our house, like, in the
What
hallway.
the fuck?
And I remember being like, Mom, why is this axe in here? She's like, it's always been here. What are you talking about? So, like, yeah. So that was a lot. So that way was
So
it was
you
like
were
very,
also going through some gaslighting then too.
oh, it was so
and
much gaslighting.
major emotional abuse. They mind fucked you.
Man,
oh my
Katie.
God.
You know, it's
Wow.
amazing what the human brain can do to be able to survive that and to find your light and to still live that outside of the home. Like I'm just
Dissociation, I think, helped.
dissociation. Yeah, I do a lot of that.
That's
No, really, like that I do get that. I've done
Yeah.
that multiple times.
I do it a lot, and I didn't
Um,
even know what it was. I didn't know it was a thing. I thought I was actually losing my mind, and I told my
Yeah.
therapist, I was like, "Something's wrong with me. I think I'm losing it," because there are times when I feel like I'm outside of my body and I'm not, like, attached to what's happening.
and I'm watching what's happening.
But I'm not a part of
I'm
it.
not a part of it.
And she's like, "Oh no, that's just dissociation." Like,
Yeah.
I get that. I was like, "Oh, well, thank God I'm not."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, though, when you disassociate, for me in my
Mhm.
situation, you tend to be quiet, and
Yeah.
that pisses them off so fucking bad that you're not talking or responding or getting upset or crying or yelling or screaming, and then it just gets worse. So, like, there's, it is what it is, but that's what I did. But that always made it worse.
Mhm.
Wow. Okay, let's talk about now. I really want to read your book, and
know.
I hope that all of our listeners go grab it too. It sounds fascinating. Tell us a little bit about how you came. So you said you were journaling with your first partner, and then you were looking for, and I had that same related experience. Mine was a long time ago at Barnes and Noble, sitting on the floor being like, there's not one fucking book about being
Yeah.
married to someone with bipolar that isn't depressing as fuck.
Mhm.
So I felt hopeless. And so probably you were feeling hopeless. And is that like when you were like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it better or differently?
yes, absolutely. And that was that's one of the things that I love about my book is that I didn't write it like 10 years after my whole healing journey. I wasn't like, okay, let's sit down and try to remember what happened during that time and write about it. Everything, all of the tools and the tips that I give in my book were actual things that I developed like in real time while I was in the thick of it. And I would be like, okay, I'm freaking out about this today. I tried this, that didn't work. I tried this. Oh my God, oh yes, awesome, this worked. Let's start practicing it more. And so that's one of the things I think makes it really unique. And yeah, at that same time, I was like, but again, it needs to be conversational and approachable and lighthearted so that, and one of the things that I do want to clarify is that I talk about, like the things that we've talked about during this, some of the heavier, like the more difficult parts of the actual trauma, I do talk about, but I really don't include, I mean, I would say that's probably like 20% max of the book is the actual details of the abuse. Everything else is about moving forward because that was really important to me as well.
Right.
Well, and I'm sure that people who are reading your book, you don't need to tell them that they lived it. So now they want to know, like, what am I going to do now? How the freak do I get on with this? And how will I ever enjoy being touched ever?
Yeah.
So was there more that you wanted to add to the self-pleasure masturbation chapter? You were talking about the healing, which I thought was really interesting that I had never heard of before. And I love that. And then you were also talking about how I find this fascinating because no one talks about this, where to have an orgasm, you have to think of something that's not, that's fucked up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my next
Katie said it first. Props to you, girlfriend.
Props to you. Yes.
I am seriously like, you're
seriously.
like, I just totally love you.
Thank you. That makes me feel wonderful. Thank you.
We're obsessed now.
We're obsessed with this throat chakra. You just
Yes.
fucking busted it
Yes,
out.
we're
Like, you
bust-
go, girl.
Thank you. And you know what? Funny thing about that, I used to get strep throat even as an adult, like multiple times a year.
Wow.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yep.
Jeez, that's
So.
so I get goosebumps every time like
Yep.
I hear something like that
Yeah.
where it's so connected. Your body and mind are so connected.
Oh, truly. Yes.
Was there anything else that just before 'cause we talk about masturbation because I definitely want to go there. But
Sarah and I are all over.
we're all
now.
over the yes. Is there oh shit, now I forget what I was going to say.
Is there anything else that happened with your body?
Oh yeah.
That-
yes.
yeah.
That
Yeah,
you
that's what I'm
now
here for.
looking back, you're like, oh yeah, that was totally connected to my trauma.
Well, I know that I was in fight or flight mode for 18 years.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Right.
And as you both know, like when that happens, everything, like your digestive system is kind of
Yep.
put on hold. And so I remember getting to college and being like, and meeting and living with other people and being like, wait, it's not normal that I'm physically in pain and ill every time I eat. That's so weird.
Oh,
And it was just
yeah.
because I had like basically my digestive system never properly developed because it just
Right.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And then the other thing, I would love to talk about dissociation a little bit for a second.
Please do.
Because
Yeah.
I worked as a personal trainer for a few years, like after college. And I remember one of the things that I noticed were so many women would get very emotional with, because we did like Olympic weightlifting, and they would, and myself included, when I did squats, there were times where I would just start crying while doing like heavy squats. And there were multiple women that I would train that would get emotional during these specific movements. And one day I was trying to work out and I kept trying different movements, but I just felt so weak and I could not even move my body through them. And I was like, finally, I just heard myself like, lay down and meditate about this because we got something to say.
Yeah.
So, I laid down and I just like thought to myself, and all of a sudden I had this image of me working out, but like me floating above my body. And I realized that I dissociated my entire life. I had no idea that that's what I was doing. And so for a really long time, I was really dedicated to working specifically with trauma survivors and teaching us all how to like move our bodies in a way that we remain connected to them. And I think that's such an important part to experiencing pleasure too, and physical intimacy, is just being able to stay in your body when you're participating in it.
Right. I'm actually going through, it's going to take me like 2 years total to become a yoga therapist. So, and same kind of thing, not physical therapy, but more of like trauma survivors and for addiction and things like that. So I totally get that whole like moving your body, and Amy and I both teach Booty yoga, which is all about like moving that energy through your body and getting all the shit out and like shaking it off.
And I try to explain, like I just recorded one today, that the reason you tear up, but the reason you laugh, the reason you cry, the reason you're pissed is because you're moving it. Like the trauma stores itself in your body. And that's where some of that pain comes from. And when you move it out, it hurts. But at the end, you feel like you're like flying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think I think it's all women should participate in it, because whether you've experienced trauma or not, we all went through some version of puberty. And I remember like developing very early, and I'm a kid, I'm like 11 or 12, and all of a sudden adult men are like looking at me in ways that make me uncomfortable, as well as the boys in my class, which I know almost all women have experienced. And so, and on top of that, I was also experiencing abuse at home. And so my body just became this place where I was like, get out, get out. And I think whether or not you've experienced abuse, I think so many women have that experience at puberty, and they leave their bodies without even realizing it, and then like never learn how to come back. So I think that learning how to do these movements is very important.
For sure. My daughter said something really, really interesting yesterday.
When doesn't she?
I know.
She's amazing.
She's 11 and she's developed. And she was telling my boyfriend and I about a boy that she liked, and it was a different boy from the boy 2 weeks ago and whatever. And she was like, listen. I was like, what the fuck? Lily. I was like, where is this coming from? But she goes, listen, I've got to get all this in before middle school and they start sexualizing me. So at this point, at least now I know they like me for me.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
I was like,
She's fucking 11.
I was like, okay, girl.
Okay.
Okay. Cause she's like, this is my last chance.
Oh my gosh.
I love that.
So, there's something to be said about the openness of, I'm both Sarah and I are working in our homes about being very open about these things. And at times it makes them uncomfortable. And at times they can say things like my daughter just did. And I think it's so important because I never want her to feel ashamed of the fact that, yeah, she has a big chest and a booty. Like,
Right.
that's just the way it is. And no, they should not look at her like that,
Right.
and that's okay to, feel that way, to feel protective, but also at the same time, find that balance of like, enjoying your body too and not feeling shame.
Mm-hmm.
God.
Yeah.
Road I've got ahead. Jeez.
Yeah. Well, I know. Because when you think about the road behind us,
Yeah.
and how hard it was, for all of every girl growing
Yes.
up, like you said, experiences some sort
Some sort of
of
something.
some kind of body associated trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be something just as like somebody sexualizing them that's older.
Sometimes it's like, we can take it away from heavy trauma. It could just be like someone makes a comment one time, some old man or whatever, or some guy walking down the street says something to you one time. That shit can stick in your head.
Yep.
Then when you're being intimate with someone, that's what comes in your head.
Mm-hmm.
And your partner's like, what? That was like 15 years ago. What is wrong with you? But I don't know how to explain it. It's hard to get rid of that once somebody puts it out there.
Yeah. So, talk to us about your healing process. Like, we know you started and you were journaling and kind of working through it. And then like what steps, like how did you get to a point where, I mean, I'm sure you're still, like you said, you're not all the way there. I don't think anybody can ever get completely to a point where they're like, I'm over it. Like that just doesn't happen. But like, how did you even get to a point where you're like, okay, it's okay for me to experience pleasure?
Wow. So I feel like we keep putting the self-pleasure topic off. I do want to say one thing about it, but I'm getting back to it. It's segueing. It's a segue, I promise.
Okay.
But the one thing as far as like the steps to healing was one of the very first thing that I did when I was working through my trauma was identifying all the voids that I had because of the trauma, such as like I call it parent void or the safety void.
Yes.
And it's these like holes that feels like a hole in me that it was a result of not receiving something that I needed in that moment. And then identifying the ways that I had been trying to fill those voids with like other people or things or a bowl of ice cream and being like, no, and I talk about it in my book. I say like, I think make your voids your best friend or cozy up to your voids. And like literally after you've identified them, do not be afraid of them because it is scary to be like, oh, I have this deep gaping wound where I wish that I had parents. And that's hard to look at and it's hard to think about, but like be like, hey, this void's my best friend. Let's talk to it. What do you need? What do you need to feel good and heal? And then start doing those things for yourself. So that was vital in my healing journey. But back to self-pleasure.
Yes, get it, girl.
Let's do this.
So we talked about pelvic bowl healing meditations. We talked about using your yoni guardian, and then I talk about, and the other meditation that I include in the book is connecting to Mother Nature, connecting to the earth, grounding yourself, and allowing like the nutrient, just imagining the nutrients to come up in like this beautiful stream of light through your yoni into your pelvic bowl, which is so difficult to actually imagine as a trauma survivor because you're like allowing something to enter you. But it's all in your control. You're imagining it. It can be and feel like whatever you want to imagine it is. But it's so powerful in reframing receiving and allowing yourself to actually receive. So that was a huge meditation.
Wow. Yeah.
And then after that was the actual practice of masturbating. And what I really, I talk extensively about it. um, but one of the things that I had to do was I couldn't just dive into imagining being with a person. It was like, that's
Yeah.
not good for me. So I
Right.
literally started by touching myself in ways that felt good, and then imagining, like, ooh, that's my favorite outfit. Like, imagining myself in my favorite outfit,
Yeah.
like me feeling good.
Yeah.
Imagining, like, a seascape or whatever
Mhm.
I felt was
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. And then I built up to imagining things that I would love to try, like someone like kissing my nipples or like and rubbing my
Mm-hmm.
clit, or like whatever it was that felt good to me, kissing my neck, like just imagining that. But it wasn't a person; it could just be like lips or whatever I
Yeah.
want, or like
Yeah.
just the
Yeah.
sensations. And then gradually build up from there to the point. And I mean, this took months. It can take however long it takes for someone. And
Right.
then eventually I was able to imagine a person. Um, but that took work. It took work for me, and it to be able to imagine having, like, to actually be turned on by
Mm-hmm.
the image of like just a consensual sexual encounter with a guy. I was just like, I'm
Right.
so bored right now. I'm never gonna orgasm. Like, I would think that, but it took practice because I was literally rewiring my brain.
Yeah.
And I am happy to say that I genuinely, and I am not lying when I say this, I can masturbate and think about a wonderful consensual experience with a guy now anytime I want, and I
That's
love it.
so
It's like
great.
such an amazing feeling to have gotten here.
How powerful that you rewired your brain. Think
We
about
Oh,
that. That's
It's
freaking
so possible.
powerful.
It's so
That's just
possible, but it's so
it's
hard.
so hard, and that's what people don't wanna do, like,
They
not
don't
that they
want to do
don't
the
want
hard
to do it.
work.
I'm not saying they don't wanna do it. I shouldn't have said that. They
It's too hard
it's
to do the hard
scary
work.
to
Yeah.
do the hard work,
oh
and
yeah.
it takes time, just like being in a relationship. It's all hard work. It doesn't none of this comes easy. And the fact you rewired your entire 18 years of your brain in those formidable years is just fucking beautiful.
Yeah.
Uh,
Incredible.
yeah.
I mean, I have to say, when you said like I'm bored, what nothing's gonna happen. Like we talked about that
Oh
last
my
week,
gosh.
actually.
That's like half of like
It, before we started talking about sex and talking about what we enjoyed and talking about self pleasure and being verbal about it, which has only been in the past couple of weeks, Katie. Like we are so brand new
we're
to
very
this.
new on this journey. Very, very new.
I
I
know.
love
So
it.
we're like super excited about it.
Yeah, we're
Um,
like 3 weeks in.
yes, this is just a couple weeks. But we talked to Lauren Joyce, which I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she is a sex and relationship expert, and she says the same thing, like that you're saying too. Like when you were talking about self pleasuring and imagining things that were pleasurable but not
Sexual.
sexual,
Mhm.
like she talks about that too, like being in pleasurable moments all day allows you to be in your body to feel that pleasure sexually, and so you can't be fully empowered until you're sexually empowered too. So this whole full circle, like you saying that too, it's like, okay, like this is a real thing, like
Yeah.
like yeah, it's so
Because
incredible.
on top of other trauma that we have all gone through, we also have the trauma as women of work harder, do more, don't sleep. Like, I don't know,
Mhm.
how are you going to ever get to the fucking top if you take a break?
Right.
That sort of thing. And
And put others
that,
in front of you.
Yeah.
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 And when you're doing that, how do you find pleasure in anything? Because you're just like,
Mhm.
so you're not, yeah,
Hustle.
you're not there, which is why when I used to have sex, it was like, good God, can we get this over with? Like, like so I can move on to the next thing on the list.
Mhm.
Just because that's really how we are wired.
Right.
Just from culture and so like just social things that we go around. So
So then, okay, we've been asking everybody this question, all women, this question that we've been talking to try to get like a gauge on how many women are actually experiencing or have experienced this. Have you had a consensual sexual experience, but you didn't really, like, you consented, but you like totally were not into it and like really didn't even want to do it? I mean, besides your abuse, because
Yeah. So like later on with a
Right.
consensual adult, were you like, oh, I got too far. I have to just finish this situation?
I would say I have never done quite that because um well, I've always tried really hard to avoid that because I will start crying if I feel like I'm
sure.
like being forced to do it. Even
Yeah.
if I'm not, I will like start bawling.
hmm
I will say so. I all have always um, I won't say always, but I have for the most part just been like, I need to stop. Let's stop.
Good.
Um, However, I 100% know that I have been like, I'm not really into it, but like we haven't had sex in like 3 weeks, so
Right? Yeah.
okay, yeah, all right,
Yeah.
let's do it. Let's just because we're in a relationship, like we have to have sex, right? We
Right.
have to, so like
Right.
let's do it. Yes, 100%. I have done that. Yes.
And that is the one thing that women are saying to us over and over is nobody's ever said that to me. Like, I thought I was the only one.
Right.
Mm,
So that's why we're asking everybody, because we're like, it's not just us. Like, it's not just you.
Yeah.
I think this is pretty common.
Yeah. And I think something you said early in the interview or podcast, whatever we're doing here. You have me
Our discussion over cake pops and coffee.
I mean, listen, Katie, you have me like so my mind is so blown. I'm trying to keep
Yeah.
bringing myself back down so that I can properly conduct this podcast. But you said something that just kind of resonated with me that is so important, and it's like you've done this work and you're at this spot, but it's not every time. Like you still have those and that's what I think is difficult for men to understand is that yes, we've gotten over this hurdle, but like A, B, and C could have happened today with me and triggered all of these other things that maybe I haven't worked on as much or just
Yeah.
whatever it is. It doesn't mean that you're I don't want to say fixed, but it just means that you're having different experiences.
Right. And like it's everywhere now. Like everybody's posting all over social media, like healing is not linear. And
Yeah.
and it's 100% true. That is a complete truth. But I don't think people completely understand that aren't
Sexual.
going through
Yeah.
some sort of healing journey.
mm.
So yeah, talk to us about that a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, great. So a couple things. I think as far as the people who are on their own healing journeys, I think we even struggle to believe that because that's just becoming a thing now is like healing isn't linear and all of the emotions are okay and you're not like it's going to be hard. Sharing your story is going to be empowering, but also horrible sometimes,
Yeah.
like we're finally starting to have those conversations, which is awesome, but we didn't for a long time. So we still have it in our head that there's like a certain way to heal.
Yeah.
As far as people who aren't on that journey, I have found it to be actually, in my experience, it has been more difficult to be with. Like I've found my partners to extra cautious,
Oh,
and that
interesting.
has
Yeah.
been annoying to be honest.
Yeah.
Because I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm telling you that I want to like make out against this wall, and I want to like fuck right now. Like I'm telling you, please.
Yeah.
But like they're like, but there's a part of them that's like, I really want to make sure that you're okay. And I'm like, I'm not a child. I'm an adult woman telling you
Yeah.
to have sex with me right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you want to, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're into that or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I'm down with being kinky right now. Let's go. Yeah.
But I think, so that's been something that I've struggled with sometimes in the past, has been overly cautious. And I think it has been difficult to be, I mean, can be a whole other conversation, but dating people who have experienced something, who have also experienced trauma can be really amazing, but also I think sometimes it can be a lot, and both people really need to be in a space where they are committed to healing and working through their stuff, and allowing another person in while they do that. But it can be difficult to date someone who hasn't had any of those experiences either. Because to be honest with you, there's sometimes where I've dated someone and they're complaining about their dad because they want to hang out with him too much. And I'm just like, I can't, I'm
Right.
sorry, but I cannot listen to you talk about
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
That makes complete sense. Yeah.
So, do you have any worries isn't the right word. Any apprehension around having a family of your own someday?
Oh, yes, wonderful question. I really I believe the universe presents you with things at the exact right time, and this is actually I just turned 30, so now I am thinking about that more than I ever
Mhm.
really have
Right.
ever before. And one of the biggest fears, I have so much love to give.
Mhm.
Mm,
But the funny thing is, when I think about having kids, the first thought that comes up is like, oh, I'm going to resent them. I'm going to have them and I'm going to think I want them, and then I'm going to hate them. I'm going to resent them. And I know that a big part of that comes from my own mother, like Lisa, because she told us, like, oh, kids ruin my life. They will ruin your life.
Ugh.
Your like everything, yeah. Or your husband will, like, she really did kind of play into a victim role
Mhm.
where she
Mhm.
wasn't,
mhm.
but like I was convinced that your husband will abuse you, you'll be a victim, you'll give up your job, you'll have these kids, you'll be stuck raising these kids by yourself, even if you're married. So I have a lot of those stories that are not true, but they're
Right.
in my mind. So yes,
That's
to
a
answer your
whole
question.
nother, yeah, that's a whole nother level of stories to unpack. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, we do have those from what have been told to us. And I'm just realizing that now, like some of those things, that's
Mhm.
why I believe what I believe
Mhm.
or feel the way I feel about certain things. And Sarah and I were talking about recently, like changing the narrative, because really what it is people love to complain about their partners.
Yeah.
And that's how women bond.
Mhm.
And I don't know how, we're like workaholics and, we don't sleep and we complain about our partners. Like none of that's pleasurable.
No,
It's
it all
just all,
sucks.
that's all shit.
No.
Like, and that's how we become friends and
Yeah.
just
Not
change.
us specifically, but like how women
I
in
get
general. Yeah.
collectively we,
Yeah.
and just saying like, I want to change that story because I don't want to live like that.
Mm-mm.
Not that you can't complain when it's time to complain. It's just like, you know what I
Right.
mean?
But
Yeah.
that can't be your only, like, I've had friends where like that's literally the only conversation that you have between each other is like to bitch about something that's um relatable to both of you.
Yeah.
So that's why like when people work together they talk a lot about bitching about work, and
Right.
when I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
So yes, you're bringing up some amazing thoughts, like to
Yeah.
changing the narrative. And
Yeah. And the stories that you've been told.
Jesus, yeah.
So, back to, I know we're going backwards, but question I have for you with the dissociation and then just like trauma. Do you ever find yourself, and I'm only saying this because I have recently realized I'm doing this, where you like something triggers you and you like almost like it's like you have this panic and you're like, oh fuck. And you like forget that you're not there and you think that this situation is going to be the same. Do
Like
you
a
know what I mean?
PTSD response.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes. Um, there's a couple, like, even when I hear there'll be kids playing outside and one will start screaming and I
Oh
cannot,
man.
like, immediately,
Yeah.
and I know that it's fine, but I find myself like I get angry, like I have this like angry response and I have to like calm myself down and be like, hey, it's okay,
Yeah.
that kid's fine, they're just
Yeah.
playing. um
That's a perfect example. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
and I
so
think
it's like, have you found methods? And I mean, I don't want you to give away your whole book, obviously, but if you found methods that, because getting out of a PTSD response takes it like from actually reliving the experience to a place of you can remember it, but you're not going to relive it every time something happens to trigger. What have you done to try to get yourself to some semblance of that?
So in my book, I talk about two types of triggers. One is like I'm triggered right now, and I can
Hmm.
feel myself totally leaving my body and about to like freak out, and like how to kind of work myself back to myself in that exact moment. Um, and and then the second one that I talk about is I've been triggered, and I left. Like maybe I wasn't able to catch myself, but I'm gone. And now it's been like 3 days and I can still feel that I'm not completely connected to myself
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
how to get back. And the main thing that I talk about, because no, those are honestly scarier for me because sometimes it feels like I've left myself and I don't know when or if I'm coming back. And that can be
Right.
scary. And
Right.
so
Yeah.
what I
Mhm.
talk about in that moment is I call it choose a meeting spot. And you can visualize yourself. And for me, it's a pier on a little lake. And I just
Mm.
go and I sit there and I talk to myself. I'm like, hey, tell me what scared you. And like, I won't be there, but I can hear it. It'll be like, hey, this happened. And like, you walked into this situation and then people were mean and you didn't like, you let that happen. Now I don't want to be here, whatever. And I will be like, okay, I'm sorry. I'll talk myself through it. And I'll be like, I'm going to be at this pier every day for the next 5 days or for however long it takes. And whenever you're ready, come back to me. And like, and you will, and I will do that for however many days it takes. And it usually only takes about 3, but that choosing a meeting spot and just letting myself know, like, I'm here whenever you're ready. I'm not forcing you to come back, but it's safe whenever you're ready has been really monumental for that.
You are a wealth of knowledge, and
Jeez.
I don't do this all the time, but I'm like legit buying your book
Yeah.
and reading it. You're just
I tried to
yeah.
get it on Kindle and I couldn't. I was like, damn it.
Oh
I was
yeah,
like, I
it's
don't want to
just
wait for it to
right now.
No, I am ordering it and I'm reading it, and I am just you're fascinating, and you're just like I said, a beautiful, beautiful soul. Like,
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing your story with us. It is not well, nothing is easy, right? Nothing that like is good is easy for like when we want to tell our stories to help other people. And that's what you're doing. And I am sure there's, God, so many people out there who have found healing listening to you. And I hope I was just having all these visions in my head, but hopefully we can work together again and
I
do
would love
something.
to. I
Like,
would love
I'm thinking I have ideas. I'll talk to you about them later, but all these ideas, I'm like, I totally love you so much. I'm just so appreciative of you coming on and sharing your story, and just God, that you were able to get to this point.
Like I'm blown away. If you heard of the book Man's Search for Meaning,
no.
it's written by a Holocaust survivor. It's an old book. It's from the 60s, but it's written by a Holocaust survivor. And he talks about how he was locked in this, whenever they would like misbehave or get in trouble, they would lock them in these boxes where they couldn't sit up. They had to lay down. So they were
Nope.
locked in these boxes for days, weeks, whatever, sometimes, and then they'd be let out. And the way he survived it, because most people would die in those boxes because of the psychological trauma that goes along
Yeah.
with it too, that he would imagine himself somewhere else. And he would imagine himself living these beautiful experiences
Yeah.
and doing things with his family when he gets out of here, or
Yeah.
just like he just like basically used his brain to take him somewhere else. And just
Yeah.
like hearing you talk about this, it just further like solidifies the thought that we can do this. Like we
Yes.
can fight through anything.
Yeah.
We can live through anything.
And especially that part you talked about, rewiring your brain. That's that's such a powerful testament to the fact that you can we can move forward. It's hard work, but you can do it.
And I think so many times those coping mechanisms now get a bad rap, and we're like, now you have to correct, like dissociation, for example.
Yeah,
They're like,
right.
that's bad, don't do that. But it's actually the most incredible and powerful survival tool when
Mhm.
you're experiencing trauma. So like, I don't want people to totally bash that or
Yeah.
beat themselves up for using those in the moment. 'Cause
No, it's how you survive. That's it, that moment.
Katie, do you have any other thoughts for us?
Um, I the last thought I would love to say, and
Yeah.
this is the main thing that I want everyone to get from my book is that I am not offering any like crazy secrets or tools. I am just reminding everyone that they have all of the tools within themselves because we do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Everything that I talk
Yes.
about in my book, I like somehow got from within myself, and that everybody has the power to do that. So I hope that everyone knows that and believes it and can continue with their healing journey knowing that.
You're incredible.
Really incredible.
Thank you so much for coming on here to talk to us.
Thank you for
And
having me.
we know our audience is going to just,
We're going to put a link up to both your
Yes.
website and Amazon for your book.
yes, guys, go out and buy Cake Pops and Coffee. And we need to make a Cake Pops and Coffee date soon.
We do.
Love it.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing all sorts of things, Sarah. We're going to do some stuff together, Katie.
Yes.
I can't wait.
Yay.
So
She's just roping you in. She's just
sorry.
Yeah.
I got
Oh, no,
chills.
it's
No, I've got all the ideas. When
And
I
if
find
people
someone that's like
want-
like-minded and like so powerful, I'm like, I want to work with you.
Yeah.
Oh, me too. I am like energetically connect with people so intensely that I have to like calm myself down because I'll be like, I'm so excited. And
Yeah.
I just,
So
like,
at
trying
least
right
it's
now to calm
mutual. This
It's-
is
yes,
good. This is
yes.
good. It's mutual.
myself. Okay,
Because I
perfect.
feel it too.
I felt actually, okay, this is so bananas, but I felt that through our email communication.
and I
like-
wasn't the one emailing, so I don't know.
Like, I just felt like I was like, I feel connected to this woman. Like,
As-
you're,
As soon as her face popped
Yep.
up, I was like,
mhm,
what?
like, your energy is just so fucking awesome.
Oh, thank you. That feels awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you so much,
God,
Katie, for
thank
coming
you.
on. And we will definitely be in touch soon.
Yes, let's get together again. Let's do something else. This is just, we want to have you back on. Maybe we can have a whole episode about relationships and I don't know, all the other stuff.
Possibilities are endless.
Yeah,
So much healing to be done.
so much healing. Yes.
All right. Thanks, Katie.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Okay.
Say it now, play it proud, shout it out, make it when we go.